this morning. It's good to see you. We started our study last week on patience. And I thought we had a pretty good study overall on it. There was a lot of good conversation. We tend to roll back and forth as we talk about things, but that's all right. If we get off topic, that's all right. I enjoy those. I think those are some of our best conversations. Our opening verse is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 2, which says, "Be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another in love." And so we talked about last week some of the things. We kind of got, I put an outline a little bit as to kind of how we're going to talk about the topic. I've got some openings here because we tend to pick up some different studies, but we kind of wandered into why is it important last week a little more than we talked about what is patience or to be patient. And I wanted to give Webster's dictionary definition of what patient is. First is bearing pains or trials calmly or without complaint, manifesting forbearance under provocation or strain, not hasty or impetuous, steadfast despite opposition, difficulty or adversity, or able or willing to bear, used with it's just all kinds of crazy stuff. Would you agree with that? What's the word that we said we like? I said I like this concept of the long suffering. I like the concept of the word long suffering. I think it gives us just a little bit more of an example of what that actually is that we're doing when we're trying to be patient and we're trying to be patient. So now let me ask this question, because I didn't ask it last week. How many of you pray for patience? How many of you pray for patience? Remember, this is a participation class, right? You got to talk back to Andy. What'd you say?
Daily.
Yeah. Listen, let me ask you a question. Do you really pray for patience? Okay. No, you are. How do you get patience? Experience. What's another word? Trials. Yes, it's suffering. Long suffering. That's how you get patience. Is that the weirdest thing in the world? Oh, God, you ask God to give you patience to help you deal with things. How do you learn it? How do you grow it? How do you strengthen it within you? The only way to do it is by struggling. How do you build muscle weight? How do bodybuilders grow their muscles? Pick up heavy things. You ever watch the videos of that? You ever seen pictures of it? You watch the Olympics trials and training and all of that? Do they look like that's pleasant? No, because they're building that muscle and right, like no pain, no gain. Everybody knows that saying, right? The no pain, no gain. We have to long suffer. What does suffering mean? To endure something, right? Pain, agony, defeat, whatever you want to call it. We have to be,
Endure things not pleasant.
Endure things not pleasant. You ever suffered through a good thing? You ever met people that suffer through good things? They're just never happy, right? There's just what it is. They're suffering through the good and the bad, right? But patience, when you pray to God for patience, what typically happens?
Gives you something to be patient about.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Right now, arguably, does God do things that are going to make you sin? No. But what does God do? God puts things in your pathway that helps strengthen that, helps grow that, helps make you stronger, makes you more competent, more capable in those different things, right? You say that we're all the time. Can you think of, I want you to think of individually, a time that you may have prayed for patience and what happened? Just think about it for a second. I'll give you a little bit of time here just to think about that. What happened? Right? When you're younger. How many of you were impatient when you were younger? I raised my hand. I'm not afraid to say it. How many of you are impatient now at 47? Me. Right? I'm still somewhat impatient, but I'm not nearly as impatient as I used to be because life has been long suffering. Now, please don't misunderstand that statement. That doesn't mean life has been bad. That doesn't mean existence has been terrible. It just means things have happened in my life or in our lives that help us develop patience. My children are one of those things. How many of you have developed patience because of your children? How many of you have developed patience because of your spouse?
That gets 2 arms.
Why do they raise their hands on that one, Tom? How many of you have gained patience because of experiences with your parents? Or your siblings? Or friends? We are in the midst, me and Sherry are in the midst of a struggle with something right now, not between us, but in an outward of our relationship thing, where we are having to be very patient. And it sucks. Because I don't like to be patient. I like to... How many are like that? I'd rather whomp that yak and move on. You know, Dave Barry talked about in an article back in the 80s about shopping. And he is not a patient individual. Do y'all know who Dave Barry is? Columnist out of Miami, Florida. He's now retired, but he wrote humor columns. He's got books and books and books of stuff. He wrote one on Whomping That Yak talking about shopping. He said, I'm not a patient person when I shop it. When I shop, he said, I'm a laser shopper. He said, and then he talked about caveman would go out and whomp the yak and bring it back home. That's what we need to do, right? You don't have, why do you got to do all this shopping, right? I'm a whomp the yak kind of person. I go out, I do what I need to do, and I come back, right? That's what I do. How many are like that? Right? I am not a big wanderer in that kind of way, right? But how many of us have had friends that have helped us grow our patience, that have experienced things that have made us strong? Okay. How many? Do you need to snort?
Nope.
All right, sure. All right. How many of you have had to grow patience because of church? Because of your faith? Where experiences with people within the body have driven us. Oh, no, I've been there. I've done that. You be patient, right? Long suffering through all these things in life have helped us to get to where we are. Right? Would you be the same person you are today without the struggles of your life? When you ask God, just God help me be the best that I can be. We know one of those things is to be long suffering. Because patience is not just for you. How does patience serve the kingdom? How does you being, or me, I'll use me as an example. I pointed at you. How does Andy being more patient serve God?
I think it reflects his character.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an important part of God's character that appeals so much to us as broken, flawed humans.
Mm-hmm.
We need God's patience. So when we can extend that to other people, it's a good mirror.
Absolutely. So we emulate Christ, right? We emulate God. We are patient with those, right? How is God patient with us? Self-reflection. Name a time in your mind when God was patient with you. Daily. How about every second of life? What are examples in Scripture of God being patient? Well, it started in Genesis 1:1 to the present. Isn't it? Why are we even still here? Because of God's patience. Because it is not God's desire to send anybody to damnation. It is God's desire that all be saved. And so what does God do? We've talked about that on Wednesday nights in our men's class. Talking about the fact that we have went on as long as we have. Why have we gone on as long as we had? Well, honestly, because God wants as many of us to return to Him as possible. And so He keeps and is continuously patient with us. But general concepts in it. How about the Israelites? I can't spell it. The Israelites. I'm not even going to try it today. It's just an awful day. The Israelites. Can anybody name a time when He was patient with them? No, whatever. You just look away.
You just look away.
When was the time God was patient with the Israelites?
They got them out of Egypt, which weren't there.
Between there and the promised land. What happened with the Israelites when they came out of Egypt? Marched across the water, right? Across the Red Sea, right up to the edge of where? Right up to the edge of the promised lands, and then they messed it up. And then he said, well, you know what, we're going to take a little bit of break because y'all don't really understand what's happening. Even after all of the things you've seen, we're going to spend a little time in the desert. And then in the desert, several times God said to Moses, I am going to wipe out these people because I am grieved that I have created them. See, now it bothers me. Okay. I'm not very patient with myself on that.
Let me spell it for you.
No.
Okay.
No.
I can go and write it.
Yeah, sure. You can write it for you. You said class participation. We're trying to see.
And so when you take a look at it, God said several times to Moses, I'm going to wipe them off the face of the planet because they grieved me. But Moses came to him, and God ended up doing what? Sparing them. Is that right?
Yes.
Is sparing them. God has been patient. God has been patient with us. Think of a time in your life when God has been patient with you. The Encyclopedia Britannica says the quality or virtue of patience is presented as either forbearance or endurance. In the former sense, it is a quality of self-restraint or of not giving away to anger, even in the face of provocation. It is attributed to both God and man, is closely related to mercy and compassion. I struggle with patience. I struggle with the concept of patience. People make me mad. Do people make you mad? People frustrate you. People say things to get on your nerves, do things to get on your nerves, and you just want to reach out and... Right? How many of you were that person growing up? Don't answer the question. How many of you were brawlers? All right? Get into fights. You know what I do for a living? I talk to a lot of people. Yeah, guys especially will come in and say, yeah, when I was younger, I wasn't a very patient person. I got in a lot of fights. And so, what does the Bible say about patience?
It's a virtue.
It's a virtue, and a virtue is?
A good quality.
A good quality. I think that would be right. She wasn't expecting a follow-up. She'll never answer another question.
Yes, I will.
Patience is a virtue. It's something that we strive for. It's something that we look for. It's something that makes us better, makes us stronger, makes us more capable. Brings us arguably closer to who? Brings us closer to God. What is another way, as it comes to patience, that it benefits the kingdom? It's a mirror of God, as Catherine said. Let me ask you, you ever shared the faith with somebody? Think inside your head. You ever shared your faith with somebody? Ever been frustrated? Because it doesn't seem, no matter what you do, it's difficult to get that person to move your way. And I'm praying about it, and we're reading scripture about it, and I'm praying about it some more, and I'm showing them a good example. I'm doing all these things, and they just don't seem to what?
Get it.
They just don't seem to get it or to grasp it or want to move that direction. And you ever get frustrated with them? You ever get upset when they make a mistake or they do something in their life that is against that concept? Bless you.
Thank you.
Anybody ever had that? Anybody ever experienced that? Scripture talks about that specifically. And it tells us to be what? Patient. Why would being patient be important in that situation? Y'all have hard time with words today too?
God's in control and we're not.
It's difficult because God's in control. Because we want what? What did we say our society was last week? We live in an fast food society. We are immediate gratification society. We want to come up and say, hey, Let me tell you about Jesus. And then I tell you about Jesus, and we expect you to just, whoa, I want to be a part of that. And then they come and they give their life to Christ, and they live like a Christian for the rest of their life, right? That's what we want. We want it just like that. But God's in control. He works on His own timeline. And so a lot of the times we just have to plant the seed. We just have to nurture the seed. But we got to wait for God to give growth to that seed. And that is a struggle for us. Because we don't like that. Because, well, we want it to happen immediately. What else? What do we struggle with that? That word doesn't look right. Anyway.
If we are not patient,
Mm-hmm.
we may be the only person that they see God in.
That's right.
And if we walk away from them and give up on them, who else is going to be there?
Image reflection. We may be the only person that they meet. We may be the person that they look to as that example. And if we become angry and frustrated and mad because they don't turn the way we think they should go, and we get mad and frustrated with them, what do we end up doing? Anybody ever been guilty of that? Being that person that did that? Got frustrated? Upset? When somebody wouldn't listen or hear? I just don't understand why you can't get this. What, are you stupid or something? Yeah, that'll get them. I guarantee you calling them stupid when you're trying to share the gospel is going to, don't do that. All right? But it is that we have to be a reflection of God. We have to understand that God's a control. We got to be that reflection. We have to show them God's patience through us. You might like the thought of that. What do you think?
I think it's hard because you get tired and worn out with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just want to ignore it.
Why is it called patience? Because we get what? Tired, worn out, beat down. Right, I use children a lot in my discussion just because, I got 100 of them. And you ever get tired raising your children? You ever get tired of raising your children even when they're adults? For those who have grandchildren that are older, my little grandbaby is just like that big, right? But you ever get tired with them? You said, why can't you get it? Why don't you understand it? I lost my temper with Caitlin the other night. Right? I told you I'm not afraid to share things, right? Man, I got angry with this little girl. And I got so angry, she flinched. Now, I don't hit my children, really. I hit them, but I don't hit them. I don't really normally hit them out of anger. I do spank. I'm not afraid of spanking. But I went up like this, and man, she jumped back and flinched. I don't know what she thought I was going to knock her across the driveway. But I've never done that to that child. But I was how angry I was. I was angry because of something she said. She triggered me out. And it's not her fault I got angry. That's not what I'm saying. Because anger is all on me. But I lost what? I lost patience with this child. And I said some mean things. What does losing patience get you? You know what I had to do? What'd you say? I had to apologize. So as parents, how easy is that? How easy is it to apologize to your child, especially your child that is old enough to understand the world around them and to grasp general concepts of life? She's almost 17 this month. She's an adult, for lack of a better way to look at her. She gets it. But I had to apologize to her. I lost my patience with her, And all of a sudden I had to be what? What's another word? Humble. See? Humble. See, there's on our list of things to study, is being humble, being contrite, being willing to apologize. And once we found her, because she got mad and ran off, once we found her and she came back into the house, I went into her room and I told her, she was really, really upset. Was she not really upset? She was really, really upset. And I told her, I said, Caitlin, I said, I need to apologize to you. There was no but. There was no, well, you. It was just like, what I did was wrong. And I'm sorry. I said some harsh things that I didn't mean, and I apologize. And I said, I'm going to leave it at that. Up to her. It's up to her past that point, right? But all I can do is apologize and try to be repentant and not repeat the behavior. But have you met me? Chances are this child's going to bring it out in me again. Anybody have that child? I got 2 to 3 of them. Y'all want one I'm willing to share? Because, good golly, man. Aaron, that child, he just... and then Caitlin's just like him. Right? But I lost patience. What happens in situations when you lose patience? It's not that you get mad. It's not that you upset them. What does losing your patience cost you?
It costs you respect in the other person's eyes.
Is that right? Influence? Close enough? Do you know what it costs you when you lose your patience? It costs you is that spelled right? It costs you influence. Now you might think, Andy, I don't care about... No. As a Christian, influence is very important for us. Because influence is a direct reflection of who we are. And are we a Christian or aren't we a Christian? If we're a Christian, we're supposed to mimic who? Look like Jesus. We're supposed to look like God, right? We're supposed to do our best to try to be like that. That's the influence we have in the world. I'm telling you, people are watching you. And when you are not patient and when you are angry, because lack of patience tends to lead to what? I would argue there's a direct correlation to anger. Would you agree? That when you lose your patience, how does it typically present itself?
Frustration
Right.
bubbles out with anger.
Right. How does that play out in marriage? One of the things we talked about last week was marriage. Towards the end of it, that was one of the things we got a little off on a tangent on. But how does it play out in marriage, Sherry? How does it turn out? When I lose patience in my marriage, I get loud. It's turned out recently when I lose patience, I get quiet. Which one bothers you the most?
Quiet,
The quiet.
because you're not quiet.
Because I'm not quiet. And it's really that. So when I lose patience, my anger is now presenting in silence. What does it cost you? Well, it costs you influence. Because you see, I might be yelling at you, but there's somebody watching. And that person goes, he calls himself a Christian. Look how he's... And we lose that influence of our faith upon them. You have no ability at that point in life to be able to share your faith with that other person. Do you know that? Why would they ever want to listen to you? Because what they do is they say, oh, he says he loves God and he's a Christian or whatever, and he lacks that kind of patience. What is the benefit of being a Christian if you're that kind of a person? See the connection to it, right? And so your influence is blown.
Well, you lose your resolve too, and then
Resolve?
you distance from them,
Okay.
and that kind of sort of helps the influence situation, doesn't it? Because you distance yourself because
Mhm.
you're tired, and then when you find, or they know that they love you, right? And they know that they've upset you.
Mm-hmm.
So then they come back,
Mm-hmm.
and then you think, well, okay, I need to have some patience. Try this again.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's the dance.
Mhm.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is that
It's hard. I would agree.
this is hard.
Who thinks it's easy being patient? The Bible, what does the Bible have to say about patience? Patience originates from God. Romans chapter 15, 4 and 6. Patience is a part of the fruits of the Spirit. Now, I put fruits of the Spirit up here as possible study on our road to joy, because fruits of the Spirit are behaviors and attitudes that we are to have. I thought that would be a good one. Patience is a product of self-control and is part of godliness, 2 Peter 1 and 6. Patience was demonstrated by Christ, Isaiah and Matthew and in John. Give me an example of when Jesus was patient.
Being tempted by the devil.
Who said that? Tempted by the devil. Why would it be important to be patient during temptation? Is lack of patience, or is that part of temptation? What do you think? I think it could be. I think it could be a way that we're tested. Anybody ever heard the term, you are testing my patience? Who do we normally say that to? Children, you are testing my patience, child. Have you ever said that to you? I think I have. Have I said that to you? I probably said that to you. You're not even my kid. How else was Jesus patient?
He's patient with his disciples, trying to teach them the lessons.
Yes, absolutely. His disciples, absolutely. Because what did the disciples think for the greater portion of the ministry? It's going to be an earthly kingdom. And Jesus kept having to come back and tell them and tell them and tell them. How many times was he patient with them? I mean, each one of them. With Peter, I mean, how patient was he with Peter? Peter kept trying and trying and trying, and Jesus is like, well, you're going to deny me. I would never deny me. Okay. And then what did he do? Y'all ever read that and picture it in your brain? That Peter's over there and he starts fussing and cussing because these people say you were with that Galilean. I didn't know that man, blah, 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 blah. And then he denied him 3 times and that cock crowed and Peter looked over at Jesus and Jesus was looking right at him. Jesus isn't paying attention to anything going on around him. He's looking at Peter. You ever put that in? You ever try to look at that through the picture of your mind? What do you think ran through Peter's mind? Well, we kind of know what it was. He freaked out and ran. Was Jesus patient with him? He was. What another time was Jesus patient?
He patiently waited whenever the crowd was there to stone the woman.
Mm-hmm.
To wait till everybody left before he could talk to them.
Mm-hmm. His converse. Has anybody watched any of The Chosen? That online episode? Really good. The last one of the first season is really good. It's the woman at the well. And Jesus was patient in explaining things to people and waiting for them to understand. Because he was just very calm, very relaxed. I think the portrayal of that at the well is very well done. Because, I mean, he was almost joyful in discussing this with us. And the woman wasn't getting it. She was really frustrated. And he's just like, well, it's very patient. Jesus was very patient in explaining who he was and what his mission here was. Of course, we know patience helps us grow during trials. Romans 5 verses 4, Romans 12 and 12, Romans 15 and 4, James 1 through 3. Am I in the way?
Oh, no.
Patience allows us to be strengthened and blessed by God. How does that work? How would patience allow us to be strengthened and blessed by God? How many of you learned a lesson through patience? Anybody? Anybody ever learned a lesson through patience? Anybody learned a negative lesson through patience? Yeah, I learned I better not do that again. You ever said something and learned maybe I shouldn't have done that? Patience is pleasing to God. He wants us to be patient. He wants us to be long-suffering. One of the things as Christians we're supposed to be is long-suffering as we wait for His return. Next week, I want us to talk about opportunities for us to not be patient. And I want you to think about this before next week, if you would. I'll put it on the thing. In a way, for us to understand, is there an opportunity where a lack of patience is a good thing? Remember when we were talking about content, there was a topic that came through that said, is there a time for us, or is it okay for us to be discontent? When is an example of that? There may be an opportunity where it is not okay for us as Christians to be patient people. That might be an interesting one.